Hello and welcome back to my craft room. Thank you very much everybody who watched the making 16 cards in one go video that I put out yesterday, and for all your lovely comments. A couple of the questions that came up were kind of made me feel like maybe I went a bit too fast. I was just kind of playing and filming it, and I thought you might like watching along. I wasn't really kind of meaning it as a tutorial as such, and also I did use a lot of stuff because part of my idea was like just to play with a lot of the stuff that I've got, you know, because if you don't use it, it's not a waste unless you don't use it. I'm lucky enough to have an awful lot of art supplies one way and another, and I don't feel guilty about that. I love them, I really enjoy them, I appreciate how lucky I am to have them. The only way I would feel guilty is if I don't use them. Wasting them is a crime for me. So that's what I was doing yesterday, but today I thought I will do some other, you know, perhaps show a couple of simpler, less layering colour combinations, slow it down a little bit, use a few less supplies, and just maybe make it a bit more doable. Because honestly, if you just jump in my mind, you can use that same process that we did yesterday with whatever supplies you've got. But I thought, well, it's easy to just say that. Maybe it's better if I show it. So let's go to the desk, stop waffling, and get on with it. So I'm going to use this. I've got this Artful mixed media pad, still left from when I had a box a few months back. So I think I'm going to try doing 3 smaller, because yesterday I worked on A3, obviously this is A4. I'm going to do 3 smaller pieces today. So if you didn't see yesterday's video, this is what I ended up doing yesterday, and it was just a layered, very mixed media process, building up layer upon layer until I was kind of happy with it. The idea was that I masked all of these areas off. The worst bit was the disastrous tape peel at the end. I think because I'd stuck things over the tape and things, it just didn't peel very well. But by the time I trim them down to turn them into cards, which is what these are intended for, it'll be fine. Mount them onto a card and add some wordage. But I'm going to leave all that because I want it to be a surprise for people who get the cards. My attempt today is going to be to show a slightly trimmed down version of that. But having said that, feel free to throw whatever you've got at it. The whole point of this is it's a great way to experiment with the supplies that you've got, see what they'll do and what they won't do sometimes for me. So my first step is to take some gorgeous washi tape to mask this off with. It always feels like such a waste, but I've got to use something to mask off with, and it's nice to use something pretty. But if you don't use it, eventually it goes all gunky or it doesn't stick anymore, and that's annoying. So there we go. Now, the first thing I did yesterday, I'm going to do again today, because it's so easy and it just takes all of the fear of getting started thing out. I'm taking a matte graphite pencil, but you could use... I'll try to come up with some alternatives as I go along. So I'm using this because I really like it. You could just as well use a colour pencil, or you know, whatever you've got. You could try charcoal or something, but bear in mind that later layers will possibly activate that charcoal, so it will mix into your paint and things like that. So which might be lovely, but you know, you just need to be aware of it. So I'm just going to use this anyway, and I am just randomly scribbling. Okay, anyone can do that, right? And at this stage, I'm not giving a single thought to these individual rectangles or how it's going to look in the end. Not at all. So then the next thing I did yesterday was to take a colour and scribble. Now yesterday I used, what did I use? So yeah, I use these, but honestly you could grab one of your kids' felt pens if that's all you've got. It's just something to add a bit of colour. This time I'm not going to add all the colours. I'm going to be a little bit selective, so I'm going to go for something pinkish this time, and for want of argument, let's use a pink pencil. Yeah, let's just go for it. Try and vary my marks a little bit. There we go. You can just get the kids to do this with you, eh? So that's that. And then the next thing I want to do, okay, so now I'm going to use my old prescription prepayment thing. I'm not showing anything private there. That certificate number would do nobody any good now. It's well out of date. So, but you know, you might have an old gift voucher card or old hotel key card or old National Trust card or something like that. And I'm just going to use that to apply some just white paint to start with. Or you could use gesso if you've got it, but let's just squirt it. Let's just dab it around like that. Okay. The thing is with any of these kind of mixed media things is that it builds up layer on layer. So the thing is that you don't have to worry about any of the layers, because you just keep working on it until you're happy with it. A lot of this will get covered up anyway. It's quite a good practice at kind of letting go and not being precious about things, you know. There we go. So I've got that kind of all over. I'm probably going to put this to one side to dry off a bit now. Well, I am. Not probably. There's no probably about it. I definitely am. I think I might, just before I do that, I might get the wrong end of a paintbrush and just scribble in it again. Okay, let's put that to one side. Now I'm going to do the same process again, but I'm going to use a different base colour. I'm going to do more kind of turquoisey colour. So I've pulled out some collage pieces ready for the one I've just started now. Tried to keep it down to a bare minimum. I've just got these. This is an old napkin. This is some packing tissue. I've got some bits of book print. I've got this, which was a printed collage sheet from something I was doing years ago. I can't even remember what. But you know, whatever you've got, you could use pages out of an old book or newspaper or whatever. So that's all I've got for this particular sheet. And the next one, I'm going to go kind of teal and gold kind of colour, trying to keep it simple again. So again, packing tissue, scraps of paper. This is a bit of wrapping paper that Tom actually wrapped something in for me once, so I kept that because I liked it. It's a bit of, it looks like that was the edge of some scrapbooking paper that I've hand cut those scallops. You can see they're hand cut because they're wobbly. Bit of an old magazine. Again, magazine. I think that was my photocopy of my own collaged piece. I printed off. There's a tiny scrap left. This I can't remember where this came from, but I might use a bit of that. And I've also got these kind of things which I keep off the, you know, off the sketch pads and things. Oh, collage paper I did at some point. So those are, you know, they're just scraps. Whatever you've got, you could do it literally just out of a magazine and bits of old wrapping paper and napkins, you know, what you've got. I like the kind of turquoise teal kind of colours with some of this neutral, and I feel like a little splash of gold. So I'll come to the gold later. I'll do the masking tape again. So let's go in with the, and we'll do exactly the same thing again. And let's go with, got polychromos this time. What was that one last time? Not that it really matters. Is it that one? I think it was that one. Prismacolor. Process red. Looks like a magenta to me, but what do I know? What's this one called? Cobalt green. Looks like a turquoise blue, but you know. I find myself tittering to myself like a kid when I'm doing this process. Okay, same with the paint. Spread it around the place with my card. You know, there hopefully will be a bit of texture left in it as well once it's dry. And then later layers, it'll affect how the paint sits on later layers as well. So it will just, you might cover some of it up, but some of it will add to later layers. There we go, and put it to one side. Anybody could do that, right? And I'm going to do just the same for the next batch, which is using up some more of the lovely collage paper that Kerry sent me. So she used, now what paint, I can't remember what paint she said she used. Was it watercolour paints or was it gosh, I can't remember what she said now. But anyway, some kind of paint on cardie paper. There's some bits I cut from yesterday. There's a bit of old magazine paper, more packaging, magazine paper, old, I don't know if it was jelly prints or what, or roll-off sheets from when I was doing jelly printing. I keep the papers in my collage drawer. Again, a bit of a sketchbook. And I keep these, I've got enough already, so I'm not going to let myself keep any more probably. Or should I? I like them to use for stamping and things. Okay, so let's go in and do the whole thing again. Right, so this one was the purple and green, wasn't it? Let's go for a nice purple. Oh, that one's blunt, can't be bothered sharpening it. Prismacolor, Parma Violet. It's going funny where it's wet. So I'm just I'm not taking too much notice of the rectangles, but I'm just making sure there's a little bit on each one really at this stage, I suppose. And even that I'm not being too finicky about. Okay, so you know what the next stage is by now. So yeah, you can see the layers get covered up as you go along, but you get little glimpses, and they will, they will come out to play again later on sometimes when you'd forgotten all about them. What I'm hoping is that I'll go back to my first one now and it'll be dry enough to work on, but we'll see. So that isn't dry. I really should walk away from that now. Now what's the next stage? Wait, the next stage is the tissue paper stage. So I'm using tissue papers because I happen to get some I happen to get these lovely tissue paper circles from Zoe in the post. They were just, like packaging confetti kind of thing, but I scooped them all up because I thought they were so cute. So I used them, and I also I always keep back any tissue paper that I get, especially the colourful ones. And I love the way when you apply tissue or napkins, it kind of just blends away into the paper and just like becomes another layer. And I like the way it layers over each other, either the same colour over each other or other colours layered together. I'm being a bit more subtle with the colours today. So the first layer for this one is going to be the pink tissue. Right, so I'm going to have to go and dry these with a hairdryer, so I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so this is dry now, more or less. That's a little bit you can see there's some texture where I scratched into the paint, and where it's really thick that still feels quite cool, so it's probably still a little bit soft underneath, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I just want to add a little bit of background colour now. I'm going to keep it really simple this time, and I'm just going to use acrylic paints today, but you could, if you've got watercolours, you could do a little bit of wet in wet here. We'll just drip a little bit on and see what happens, or if you've got acrylic inks, you could drip some of them on and blow them around. At this stage I would still say don't worry about individual squares, just you're just still doing it as a whole at the moment and not worrying about it too much. So I'm going to give myself quite a big brush so I don't get finicky at this stage, and I'm just going to use this lovely, I'm going to try watering it down for this bit and just see what happens if I do that. Oh, it's a very pretty colour. It can be quite intense like that, but it can also be really soft and lovely. Do a bit of dripping and see how the texture where I've scratched into the paint is making it, is giving it a bit more interest. Oop, too much. Yeah, I love that look. It's really nice. If I wanted to, I could just mix that with a little bit of white as well and get a more opaque version of it, which I will probably do to add details later on. Let's just try a little bit on here just to Okay, I'm going to put that to one side a minute and do my next colour. Although I've got all that to play with now. Right, you can see I've done this before. This paper. I'll just use this relatively thin paper to just brush off the rest of this paint so as not to waste it, because later on I can use this for collage work. Go on to the next piece. So right, each that I know it looks like there's been a murder, but anybody can do that, right? So again, keeping it simple, just going to put the paint out a little bit less this time. Let's use my glue brush this time, it's even scrubbier. See, rubbish, anyone could do it. Paula made me laugh in her comment. So she's following on going, yeah, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Hang on a minute. Suddenly that's little pieces of art, or words to that effect. Which is when I realised maybe I'd skipped through it all a bit too quickly. So this time I'm going to go for this limey green. So yeah, you could make these really subtle or really pretty, or I think was it Jackie was saying, or was it Deb was saying, you could do a Christmas version. That'd be really nice. Okay, the texture of the underlayer is starting to come out. Really like that. Okay. Trust the process. I keep telling myself. I really should go and dry this again, but I'm feeling a bit lazy. And my next step is going to be to collage some of this pink tissue over here. So at this point I need to be aware of what happened yesterday, where when I went to do my tape pull at the end, it was pulling up great chunks, and I think that was mainly because where I'd collaged my papers on in different layers, I'd gone over the tape. Now you're going to go over the tape with the paint, so it's going to happen a little bit, but I think if I can just stay within the rectangles while I'm collaging papers on, that will help. So at this point I do now have to be a little bit aware of the rectangles, but I'm not thinking about composition as such. I am just throwing paint around, cutting, sticking, scribbling like a big kid at the minute. Now you could do this with a glue stick. You can do it with a glue. I'll prove that you can do it with a glue stick, if that's all you've got. But tissue is a bit fragile, so it's a little bit awkward. But look, you can do it, and I love that transparent layer that the tissue gives. You know, it's just very subtle at the moment, but it will all add to the different textures and stuff later on. So you could definitely do it with a glue stick if you want to, but I have got my matte medium here, so I'm going to use it because I think that's the nicest thing to use. You could try other PVA mediums, just straightforward white PVA glue, because that does dry clear, or if you've got something like Mod Podge. I just like the finish of these matte mediums. Some of them are really thin, some of them are, this is more like a gel, so you can actually stick quite heavy things on with it, but yeah, I just like it, and this is what I've got. So, and you can kind of brush it over the top as well, so when you brush it over the top it kind of gives it a finish that then resists other media later on, which, you know, can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. just a thing to be aware of. Oh look, it's reactivating the paint now where that hasn't all dried, but that's okay, we're not going to worry. So I am going to be mindful of the rectangles just to the point that I'm not going to go over the tape, and I'm just going to make sure there's at least one piece of tissue in each square. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is to add some contrast. So I've got my colour, I've got a bit of texture in the background, I've got some interesting little marks going on already, and now I want a bit of contrast, so I'm going to use black and white to do that. And I'm just going to use these Liquitex Basics black and white acrylics, but you could also do it with paint pens or colour pencils or more bits of paper, whatever whatever you like using, really. I think that, but I don't want to go too finicky, so I'm not going to give myself too small of a brush, but a sort of medium-sized straight brush. Now I'm going to start just thinking about the individual rectangles, only insofar as, the same as with the tissue, I'm making sure there's going to be a bit on each one, and I'm going to start kind of thinking, well, I've done that kind of mark in one rectangle, or do a different kind of mark in a different one. I could also do a little bit of kind of stamping with whatever rubbish I've got handy. I could do a bit of bubble wrap, or where are the things I had out yesterday? Surely not put them away, that would be a miracle. But yeah, if you watched yesterday, you'll see that I was using a mixture of spools from inside buttons, and buttons inside ribbons, and bits off of coat hangers, and I don't know, various things, little bits and bobs I've collected up over the years that I like for stamping shapes with. Thinking about putting one of these in each rectangle, but I'm not thinking about composition yet. Just getting a sort of bit of interest going. So let's put that to one side and do the blue one, and then I'll do the black on all of them as well. So I want each of these to have a bit of white as well. Not worrying about it too much, a lot of this will just get covered anyway. I just want some little peeps of it here and there. I'm thinking I might let myself have the smaller brush for the black, because it can be a bit much, can't it? Right, now I'm going to start collaging onto here. So this is just the top layer of a napkin. If you've got a problem separating them, just tap your fingers on a glue stick and go like this, and it just takes them apart really nicely. and I'm going to go back to my matte medium and just start adding pieces. So I will start to be a little bit mindful now of the composition, just a little bit. I'll start to look at, but you know, I quite like that texture. I don't want to cover it up altogether. You know, so I will probably not put that there because it would cover up the bit I like the best. I'll probably put it there. If there's bits I really hate, I can think about covering them up now. Can't really tell you how to do it. It's just, it depends on what you're using, and it depends on your taste, and you know. One piece of advice I would say is just trust the process, keep going. If you're not happy with it yet, it just means you're not done. Yeah, see, I am starting to play with composition now, because you know, I'm thinking about things I quite like the look of that peeking through there. And I don't want to lose this bit because I think that's really pretty. But this is a bit boring, so I don't mind covering that up, so it could go there. There we go, so I've just got a bit of a flower and a bit of one of the text prints, or even two on some of them, on each one, and I've just started to just begin to think about composition, but only insofar as I'm covering up the bits I don't like so much, and I'm making sure I leave some of the bits I really love. And I'm just kind of starting to think about, you know, is there a focal point, you know, but I'm not getting too bogged down in it, having said that, so just kind of letting it happen really. Right, let's go on to the blue. So what I'm starting to do here is just make sure there's a bit of the neutral, a bit of dark, and a bit of the kind of lighter turquoise colours on each rectangle, kind of. If you find yourself doing what I'm doing now too much and dithering too much, set an alarm. Don't give yourself more than 5 minutes to do this bit. It's really liberating if you can bring yourself to try it. Anybody can do that, right? I mean, you could, at this stage, instead of just doing random abstract shapes like I'm doing, you could be cutting them into flower shapes or little boats or butterflies or whatever you like, but I just quite like tearing and cutting and sticking random shapes, but it's very much a personal thing. So that's that again. Every rectangle's got a bit of everything on it, and I've just started to think about the composition a little bit, whether it's got a focal point, and you know, just balancing things out a little bit. I'm just going to water down some of this black paint that I've got left and do a bit of, do you know, I realised it wasn't black paint I was using all the way along. I realised now I've diluted it, but it's actually Payne's grey, not black, but that's quite nice. So before I think about peeling, I'm just going to do some splatting. I love a fan brush for splats. I've got this black left, so I'm going to do that. So I think what I'm going to do now is do the tape pill, and then it will be time just to add a few more little marks and doodles here and there, and that'll be either with pens or paints with a finer brush, or whatever, you know, whatever you want to use really. Sometimes what I quite like to do is to get a water soluble pen, so it might be an Inktense pencil or a Stabilo All or a watercolour pencil, something like that, that you can just kind of outline around the shapes with, and then quickly smudge them with a little bit of water on your finger or a brush, just to kind of define everything a little bit. But I don't always do that. But I think to give myself a good chance of doing that, I think what I'm going to do is do my tape pill, go over with some matte medium again, and then I'll do my mark making, because acrylic paints or paint pens will go over that. If you wanted to do it with something water-based, then you probably wouldn't want to do matte medium first. You just got to sort of adapt it depending on what you're using really. So let's see if we can hopefully get a better tape pill than we got yesterday, because that was awful. Thing is, at the end of the day I'm going to be trimming these before I turn them into cards anyway, so there. Right, what I'm going to do is, because these are not the best tape pills ever, I'm going to finish peeling the tape off all three of these sheets, clean up a little bit, and get my doodling supplies ready, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've had a good clear up. I've taken off all the masking tape. I'm quite happy with how they turned out. There's a couple of different things I want to try. I've put some little dabs of so I gave them all a coat of matte medium. Didn't really have to do that, but it was partly so that I could use water soluble pencils over the top, and yeah, didn't have to do that really, but it was just to finish them off, and so that I could, if I want to, it will be a bit easier to do, to use a pencil over the top and then wet it and create a kind of smudgy outline, which I quite like doing. I've put an extra dab of matte medium on here, which I'm just allowing to go just tacky, because one of the things I want to do is use some of these gold flakes, which I've had knocking around for quite a while. I love the look of them and I always forget to use them. I've also got some gold foil, or gold coloured, it's not real, gold coloured foil and stuff as well, which you could do this with, because I wanted a little touch of gold in the turquoise ones. But I could use a gold pen instead. I've got all sorts of gold pens, but I thought I'll try this because it's quite nice to use it as I've got it there. So I just want this to be tacky but not completely dry. Let's see how it works if I do that now. And I'm just going to let it stick where it sticks. It'll make a terrible mess, I know it will, but you know. I find these flakes harder to use than the sheets of foil, because the sheets of foil I could just press it down, press and lift up. With these I always end up getting it everywhere, but you know, hey ho, I've got it, so let's use it. Okay, so some of them are going to have quite a lot on and some just a little bit. Right, I'm going to leave them to settle while I do the others now, because then I can brush them off and buff them up, and they won't come off all over the place where I don't want them to, which is what they've done at the moment. Oh, well, I've been chatting away to myself there. What I was saying basically was I put a little tiny bit on each of these ones as well, so I can use with the foil and just show you that as well. Can't remember now where I've put it on each piece, but I'm just going to have to rub it all over and see where it sticks. No, nowhere there, it's not stayed wet long enough. You have to catch it at just the right point, just tacky. Just give it a little interesting glint or something, won't it? Oh, bit of extra hair there as well, it's nice. Don't think there's any wet there, still there's a little bit there. Yeah, you just get these little glints of gold, with which I think is quite pretty. Nice little addition. So that's those. Giving that a good press down. Now I could get a soft cloth after and buff it up a bit as well. Go. I think that'll do. Okay, so just that little kind of subtle glint of gold, and this one was, I think this one was a rose gold, and it's kind of shinier, but yeah, quite fun. I feel like that wants to be that way up. And then it was just about the doodling really. Now I'm going to use my paint pens because it's easy and convenient, so for this one I'll probably just use these, but you could definitely just carry on using the acrylic paints or whatever other paints you've been using, and just use a smaller brush to get some different kinds of marks, little dots and lines and crosses, or whatever you want to do. Or you could stamp, you could definitely add words to them, but I'm going to do that at the point where I put the cards together, which, like I said, I'm not going to show on camera now because I want that to be a surprise. The other thing I like to do is to use, I think I've already said about it, a water soluble pencil of some kind to kind of go around the outlines and then just activate them with water. I don't think I'm going to do it too much on this one because I quite like this one's quite nice soft colours, but like if I was going to, it would be this kind of like around that circle there, and because I've got that layer of matte medium, I'm sort of protected the underneath layers now, which is nice, and I've got a sort of non-porous surface now. So if I want to give a bit of definition I could do that, but I think I quite like these ones as they are. I'm going to leave them. I feel like I want a bit more black on some of these. So. Okay, so maybe we'll kind of carry on doodling like that. With this one I will probably do a lot of dotting and things. That kind of thing. It's not going to be an awful lot, and then there'll be some kind of wordage on it. I'll cut them out, mount them on a card, just to finish them off. And this is a chance to like add in a bit more contrast if I need it, so I can put some pops of white in as well. I used the cream one on here because I thought it was a bit softer, because it sort of goes with that newsprint. But for this one I'd probably use the white. So that's it really. It's just a question of doodling now. I think that's probably kept you more than long enough to give you an idea of the kind of thing you could do, and I really think this is adaptable to whatever supplies you've got really. Well, I've just got one more little lot to make now, and I've got enough to send all my stitched squares away. Just need to finish making the squares now. Look at this paint all over the shop, isn't it? So I hope you enjoyed watching that. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you again really soon, probably tomorrow.